Hi, I'm Sheila Keeter, also known as the Teacher for Inclusion, and today I'm going to talk about 5 easy steps to teach students poetry. So let's go ahead and get started. So I go ahead and I give a particular assignment to students. It is an IB assignment, which is an International Baccalaureate assignment, but you can alter it as you see fit to work for your students. It will work anywhere from seventh grade to senior year. So first I start by looking at the very basics. And what I mean by the basics is the basics of punctuation and grammar. I know that doesn't sound exciting, but it actually will determine what direction and how successful the assignment will be. So when you picture, I want you to go ahead and picture a poem in your mind. Picture the structure, picture what it looks like. One of the biggest problems with students is that when they read a poem, they stop at the end of every line, and they're not supposed to stop at the end of every line. It makes it almost impossible for them to understand a poem. So if you look on this page, it gives the written section of the assignment, and it talks briefly about punctuation and what to do and what punctuation signals them to do as they're reading the poetry out loud. So for a comma, there's a brief pause. For a period, there's a longer pause. For an exclamation, they need to use emotion in their voice. For a question, they use upward inflection. So let's go ahead and take a look at a poem that I use as an example, The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. And I'll go ahead and first read the poem as students read it. I'm just going to go over the first stanza. This is how a student would read it. 2 roads diverged in the yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both, and be some traveler long I stood, and looked down one as far as I could, to where it bent in the undergrowth. Now that just means absolutely nothing, right? You're confused, you're not really sure. What's this person looking in undergrowth and brush in the middle of the woods? And then I read it to them correctly. 2 roads diverged in a yellow wood, and sorry I could not travel both and be some traveler. Long I stood and looked down one as far as I could to where it bent in the undergrowth. Now that makes a lot more sense. And once they really get that, then you pave the way for a very successful lesson. So once they go ahead and they analyze their poem, and I'll put that up, I'm not going to go over all of it, but they do the basics, the name, the poet, the source, number of lines. They do an analysis of the poem, what they like, what they didn't like, what their connection was, why they chose this particular poem. And it's really important that you allow them to pick their poem, because you want them to have some kind of engagement or some kind of connection to the poem that they choose. Next, they talk about the different words in the poem, the structure, the thought groupings, the punctuation, the significant pauses, so on and so forth, the beginning compared to the end. And then we have my most favorite section, which is the bonus section. If you look at the bottom of this page, it says bonus. If you could visually or musically, mathematically, historically, or theatrically talk about the value of this poem, what would you do or say? Take risks and have fun. This is a great beginning of the year assignment because you can get to know your students on that level that takes sometimes the entire year to get to know them. So I've had people play the violin. I've had people play the acoustic guitar, perform some kind of recipe, a puppet show. I've had a girl do a belly dance. There's just no limit to what kinds of unique talents that the students have. So it's really a treat to go ahead and start this at the beginning of the year so that they can make connections with each other and so that you get to learn a little bit about them straight off in the beginning of the year. After this, I do an assessment, and this is after we've watched everyone else's poems. And I do an assessment on the reflections on a gift of watermelon pickle received from a friend called Felicity. And they're very easily at this point able to, once they've heard everyone's poems and they've heard everyone's analysis, they're very easily able to take this poem and analyze it. And they have a rubric and they know what to expect, and they do very well. I also provide a list such as this one in the beginning of this lesson so that they have some direction when they go to choose a poem. I give them a list of poems that they can choose from, and it's typically a list that draws engagement from the students. So I hope that you enjoyed this. This lesson you can find on my Teachers Pay Teachers page for Teacher for Inclusion or my blog. And I hope you have a wonderful day. Thank you so much.